The agenda this week explored new approaches to healthcare innovation and what science is finding out about the inner life of animals. The agenda's Week in Review begins reading the political tea leaves for each of the federal parties in light of the SNCLavalin controversy. Shachi, it's clearly too early to have any reliable polling data which would suggest here's what Canadians think about what the Prime Minister attempted to do this morning. But maybe you can tell us whether you know whether people in this country think this is a big deal or not.
Well, 2 weeks ago, they thought it was a big deal. The issue, a week ago, 4 days ago, they thought it was a big deal. What we've seen in the last 2 days between the testimony of Gerald Butts, the second round of testimony of Michael Wernick, and then the statements from the Prime Minister this morning have done nothing to make that a smaller deal. So what we are dealing with from a public assessment of the extent to which people are engaged on this issue and whether they're truly ticked off about this issue or sort of eyeballing it and going, nah, you know, we don't care, let's move on. And by the way, I do think they care. We are looking at a skier who's taken a mogul very badly and is now careening down a hill. They're
this
hitting
is the PM you're talking about?
Well, and the Liberal government. They're sliding, they're bumping, they're shifting, and it's like watching, you know, Super G on television. You go, that has to hurt. But we don't know if this is spinal fracture or rib fracture or miraculously they're going to get up and walk away.
Well, or is the skier still upright?
Not at the moment, but it doesn't mean they can't get back upright. And what I mean by that is not that, you know, again, reiterating Jeffrey's point, reiterating the fullness of time. We also have to see the Prime Minister find a way to turn the page on this. And this morning did not really do that. He is not going to be the last to speak on this matter. It's quite likely there will be more testimony before the Justice Committee. And if there isn't, this government then stands accused of not being transparent, which is, you know, the last pieces of that brand will then be gone.
Let me get Jeffrey Simpson to react to I'm thinking of Sid Caesar right now with your show of shows. Here are your poll of polls. The CBC tends to take an aggregate of all of the polls that are out there, and what they have determined is that the Conservatives are nudging up around 37%, the Liberals just a titch over 33%, the NDP south of 16%. You know, the polls would have said something very different 6 months ago, Jeffrey. This is where they tend to be right now.
They did say something.
How worried should the Liberals be about where they are in the public opinion surveys now?
Well, I think they should be concerned because you don't want to be behind, right? This particular affair in Ottawa doesn't help for a couple of reasons. One is that resignation of 2 ministers is a serious business, and these were 2 high-profile ministers. Secondly, it is impossible for a government, any government, when they're involved in an affair like this, to get their message on other issues out. Over the last couple of weeks, the Prime Minister was in Vancouver talking about assisted housing. He was in Montreal talking about the space program. He's been talking about public transit and infrastructure. And now he's going up to the far north to talk yet another apology to another group. The media gives him one sentence, and then they turn to this. So it's very hard to get your agenda, whatever it is, out to the public when the media is hyperventilating over the sniff of scandal, which I've seen many times in my career. And I mean hyperventilate. By the way, there's a very sharp difference between the coverage, both on television and in the written press in the province of Quebec about this. They're much calmer about it and much more balanced than the hyperventilation we're seeing in English-speaking Canadian press.
To what do you attribute the hyperventilation?
Sniff of scandal always drives the media to like dogs, you know, when they're hungry. It's phenomenal. And I think that's happening here. I mean, I'm not going to point any fingers at anybody, but when you see civil war, or you see people saying that Justin Trudeau is worse than Donald Trump, when you see, you know, the clock is ticking, Mr. Trudeau, you see people pronouncing with tremendous confidence that the next election is going to be framed by this issue. You know, that's what I mean by hyperventilating. It makes good copy, I guess.
Shachi.
Well, I think, to Jeffrey's point, the next election may or may not be framed by that issue, and it has a lot to do with what Andrew Scheer does next. So this is the person who actually has some say in how this all goes, and it's really going to be his moment to take advantage of, or to lose the opportunity on. So today we started to see Justin Trudeau try to pivot and try this new message around, and we've heard it in the last 2 days, jobs, jobs, jobs. Did we mention 9,000 jobs? So many jobs. And also there are job losses, or the threat of job losses back west, dealing with the oil and gas industry, dealing with agriculture. And so as we start to see the economy slowing and some concerning points on that front, I think the Liberals have figured out that they find the bread versus integrity equation is going to be more resonant on the bread side. For Andrew Scheer, though, he gets to come out and be like, hey, bread and integrity. We won't be those Liberals.
Well, let me put that to Ginny, because 1 in 4 Canadians, according to our friend Nick Nanos, who's done the research on this, say that this affair, this SNC-Lavalin situation, will affect their vote in 8 months' time. Now, that's what they're saying today. Obviously, you know, the election being in October, we don't know today whether that will have the impact in October that people today say it will. Do you see Andrew Scheer's job, Ginny, as essentially just keeping this fire as red hot as possible for as long as possible?
I do, and it's not because I think that when people vote in the fall, they're going to look at their ballot and think, what were the details of that question of prosecutorial interference? They're not, but they're going to think, you know, what do I think of the three leaders as compared to each other, and who do I want to be prime minister? And the reason that Andrew Scheer's prosecutorial approach, his approach of keeping this in the news, asking the tough questions, continuing to raise red flags, is because he's seeing the damage it's doing to the Trudeau brand. And the reason I think that the Trudeau brand matters is not so much on scandal and integrity. That's important, certainly. But I think, frankly, with the Liberals, there's a bit of historical scandal baked in. And in the past, people have plugged their nose and voted Liberal, regardless of a history of scandal. So I don't think that will be the deciding factor. But I do think people are going to look and say, on the big questions that impact my life, the economy, jobs, et cetera, who do I trust more? And so much of what Justin Trudeau's offering says is, trust me for long-term solutions. Trust me for big, sweeping programs, national programs that are going to take a while to roll out. Trust me. And in the last election, people really did. They put a lot of trust in him. And if the trust factor erodes, then his entire ballot question becomes a big problem. Whereas Andrew Scheer, I think, is saying, you might not know me all that well, but you're going to grow to like me because I'm a likable guy. And a lot of my solutions are going to be shorter term. I'm going to take the GSTF, your home heating, basic things that people can understand. And so the leap, I think, is much less significant. And that's where I think Scheer's doing really good work now to erode that trust so that he can step in with an offering that people can say, yeah, that makes sense to me.
People who've never used our healthcare system say we have the best in the world. People who've had a problem, a serious, life-threatening, like a heart attack or a car accident, say it's the greatest system ever, because it's like pulling into the pits at the Indy 500 when you've had a heart attack or you've been in a car crash. The whole pit crew jumps in there and they do a fabulous job. They work as a team, they get you back, save your life. But if your problem is not life-threatening, then it's like when we have a big snowstorm in a city like Toronto, and they plowed the main roads, and if you happen to live on a side street, maybe you'll see a plow 3 days later. That's the problem. And so we have these ludicrous wait lists, which are totally unnecessary. We are rationing healthcare. In the States, they ration it by the size of your wallet. Here, they ration it by wait lists.
Your solution in the book, you've got a top 10 list in the back of the book. I guess the most controversial recommendation you make is that you think we should allow the creation of a parallel private healthcare system.
Yeah.
If we did that, what would happen?
Well, first of all, people will always say, well, why should we give a second tier to the rich? Well, the rich already have a second tier. It's called America. They just get on a plane and go to America. The rich don't need this. The boomers, the zoomers, the middle class, we're the ones who need this. And there are polls out there that show 75% of Canadians are on side with this. I laugh about all of the political parties not wanting to touch the so-called third rail, because frankly, if you did touch the third rail and embrace this, you'd win a landslide in the next election. But the reason that we should do this is that it would open up so many things. It would open up money, it would open up time. One of the things people don't realize is the reason we have wait lists is because surgeons are only allowed to operate 1 day a week. And so the operating room is empty for the other 4 days. Now, that's not because we don't have enough surgeons. That's because we don't have the money to actually run the system. To pay for the hydro, pay for the nurses, pay for the whatever it is that would keep it open 5 days a week.
So if you allowed those with means to purchase extra care, if you like, or however you want to describe it, you think that would reduce the wait list?
Oh, absolutely. And also, I'd allow for medical tourism, for people to come from other countries to buy services, for that money to go back into our public system. One of the great canards is that myself and Dr. Day are pushing for a private system. Get rid of the public
Brian
system.
Day from BC.
Yeah, right. Get rid of the public system and have a private system. We're saying no, both together. That's the way to work. Because really, when you think of it, touching the third rail is how the train operates at its maximum efficiency. We need to touch the third rail for our healthcare to operate at maximum efficiency.
Here's where we go to the Ontario Health Coalition. And we say, Natalie, what do you think?
Oh, I wish I had a chance to talk about innovation, but I will respond to that. I think I have to.
Let you respond to that, and then we'll touch on the innovation piece.
Yeah, so unfortunately, what we're talking about here is not really innovation to improve the public system, but actually to dismantle the public system and to create a private insurance system as well. I take issue with a few things. One premise that we spend $60 billion on healthcare in Ontario, and nobody really knows what that number means without context. And the truth is, in Ontario, we actually spend among the least of all the provinces. There are several different ways to measure it, but we're
per capita, you mean?
Per capita on our hospitals, we're third from the bottom, in terms of GDP. By every measurement, we're right down near the bottom of the country. So one, is there evidence that we're spending too much? No. Could we spend that money better? Of course. Two, I think our starting point should be that we have a stellar healthcare system, highest educated health professionals, doctors, nurses in the world, according to international studies, amazing care, and I can attest to also having had heart problems, really stellar healthcare, and that matters. So a sickness system that provides for people when they're sick is important and ought not to be tossed out in the name of expanding care in order to provide more comprehensive preventive care. And it's also a misnomer to say that the health system does not provide preventive and health-enhancing care. A whole lot of home care is preventive. All of long-term care virtually is preventive care. The community health centers are an innovation model, team-based approach within the public health care system that provides all kinds of preventive care and health supporting care. There's all kinds of that activity happening within the healthcare system already. So when we have these innovators that move in and they want to take over parts of the market share in healthcare and they see it as a market to break into, often for profit, they often try to create a crisis out of the system, talk it down in order to ratchet open the ability for them to move in and take over.
I had almost that identical experience with an octopus named Octavia. And I had known her since she had arrived at New England Aquarium in Boston. We had become good friends. It is known that octopuses recognize individual people because they've done experiments showing this. And we were good friends until she laid eggs. When an octopus lays eggs, they spend the rest of their lives just caring for and guarding those eggs. For Octavia, they were not fertile eggs. There was no Mr. Octopus. So 10 months went by that she did not interact with me. And these animals only live 3 to 5 years. So 10 months apart is a long time. It's like decades. Well, when she got old and sick, and Bill Murphy, the aquarist, decided that she should be moved off exhibit to a quieter, darker area. I went in to say goodbye to her because I knew she was dying. And when I lifted up the lid to her tank, she floated up to see me, even though she was sick, she was near the end of her life. This wasn't an easy thing for her to do. And she reached her arms up out of the water and covered my hands and arms with her suckers and looked into my face. And these animals don't eat during the time that they're incubating their eggs. So I offered her a fish. She just took the fish, dropped it to the bottom. She wasn't interested in the fish. She came up to greet me.
Cy, when this happened, what were you thinking?
Well, you know, I was very wrapped up in the moment because this was my friend. And not everyone has a friend who is a mollusk. You know, we're separated from these animals by 500 million years. They are related to clams and snails. Now, chimpanzee is so closely related to a human, you can get a blood transfusion from a chimpanzee. But an octopus, this is an almost alien form of creature. So what struck me as I thought about this moment, Octavia and me together, was how different we were. You know, she has no bones. She can pour herself through a tiny opening. She tastes with her skin. She has 3 hearts and blue blood, can change color and shape. And yet, I have a friend who's an octopus. And we knew each other. I don't know what affection felt like to her, but she clearly wanted to be with me and see me, and chose to do that when she was tired and sick and dying. And that's extremely meaningful to me.
Amazing. Daphne, give me one of your favorite examples of that may give us some insight into the emotional window of animals.
Yeah, well, there's so many interesting things to talk about, but I can bring up, I guess, actually 2 things so I do research on dogs, as I think you mentioned, that dog owners very frequently ask me about. So one of them is, does my dog really love me? Or that comes up all the time, right? Or has he just learned that if he acts like he loves me and he jumps all over me and looks really glad to see me, he's gonna get a lot of treats, right? And so to that one, I think we can say that the research suggests that there's good evidence that your dog does really love you and have an emotional attachment to you. So there's a lot of research suggesting that dogs show attachment behaviors to their owners that are very similar to those that children show to parents, and that they act differently towards owners than other strangers or even other familiar people. And there's also beginning to be evidence that their hormonal reactions, right, the underlying functions generating those emotions may be similar. So you may have heard of oxytocin as a sort of bonding hormone. Dogs actually generate oxytocin when they're sort of looking lovingly into their owner's eyes, and the owner generates oxytocin in response. Now, on the other hand, the other one that owners often ask me about is, you know, I really know that when my dog has done something bad and I come home, he looks so guilty, right? He knows, and there's even a whole set of YouTube memes about this, of people filming their guilty dog. And a really great researcher who's also written some books, Alexandra Horowitz at Barnard College, who studies dogs, wanted to investigate this. When we have this strong intuition that our dog is guilty, are they? And so she set up a very simple experiment where dogs were given the opportunity to steal food, and they either did or didn't. And then she either told their owners either way that the dog stole food or not. And it turns out that when the dog looks guilty is when you think the dog stole food. And so what you're probably actually seeing is a lot of appeasement and submission behavior. That the dog is looking at you and going, I don't know what you're mad about, but you're really mad. And I'm not even saying that dogs can't feel guilt, but that's a case where our human perception of what's going on with them isn't always accurate to what's actually going on for them internally.
That is really something. Ross, you got a favorite story you want to share?
I do. Actually, even before I wrote this piece, I had occasion to do a pretty deep dive of research into elephant behavior. And one of the things that struck me over that research was not just deaths, but births. And this is not, obviously there are a ton of examples of elephant to human interactions that are really rich and emotional. But this is just even elephant to elephant, which is where I imagine that animal emotional life is even more developed. And when new calves are born in the wild, sort of like the big troop of elephants kind of coming over and like hooting and almost stamping and celebrating the birth of a baby elephant, or like the really well documented grieving behaviors where when an older elephant dies, they sometimes will bury them with sort of sticks and leaves, and they'll kind of attend what almost looks, to an anthropomorphic eye like a funeral. All this kind of stuff is, I think, really suggestive that there's a lot more going on than first meets the eye when it comes to animal emotions.
Well, let's talk about intelligence here for a second. And Ross, I'm going to pluck some more examples out of the article that you did for The Atlantic. For example, Apparently, we now know that elephants can classify humans by age, gender, and language. Sperm whales engage in consensus-based decision-making. Octopuses, yes, that is apparently the plural, not octopi. Octopuses use coconut shells as tools. Ravens can plan for the future. And what we heard earlier, lab-bound honeybees can learn to recognize abstract concepts, including similar to, different from, and zero. And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, March the 8th, 2019. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety at tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and on our Twitter feed at twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.